Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the Mustang Robotics Symposium series. I'm your director, Jacob Ursua, and behind the scenes we also have producers Jai Liang and Sophia Pantoja. Our program greatly appreciates each and every one of you for coming to the show tonight. In fact, we would like to graciously invite you to type in chat and let us know who you are. Please tell us your name, school, organization, anything, and we would gladly shout you out in subsequent episodes. And if you have any questions for the guests throughout the stream, feel free to put those in the chat as well. But anyways, please welcome the host of the Mustang Robotics Symposium series, Mr. Chad Pearson.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Mustang Robotics Symposium series. Coming to you from Southern California, San Diego area. Our school is Otay Ranch High School. We are Mustang Robotics, Team 507. We're a proud VEX Robotics club that's been around for over 10 years. And this year, during our pandemic-affected school year in Southern California, we don't get to play with robots. We don't even get to go to school campus yet. And so as a club, we got together and decided we would become TV characters, directors, and present a show that allowed us to go through our stock of alumni out there, hundreds of them, and find some stories to bring back for the kids right now in the club about colleges, college life, decisions, and how they worked out. All the positives and negatives of how they walked through college and how they got into their career. And today I'm very proud to say that I have a young man who is now starting to look like a man, joining me today. And Harwi is here. He's one of the original kids that I knew as I joined robotics. And I'm just very happy that you were able to come and join us tonight, Harwi. How are you?
I'm doing well, Mr. Pearson. Long time no see, long time no talk. Thank you for inviting me on the show. It's always nice giving back to the program that meant so much to me in high school.
Very cool, my friend. I would definitely tell you that as you were a student at Otay Ranch High School in our program, there was an obsession with you and one of your friends, Stephen, who was in an earlier episode. It is lore of our club now about how you and him would just on a daily basis. It was OCD like you can't believe. Every weekend you guys are sharing things, and it really was a really good building block for what is we currently have, which is now 5 teams that do the exact same thing, Harwi. Let's start us off. Let's get the conversation going with high school. You're in high school. You're a freshman. Me and you actually crossed paths because I'm one of the teachers in charge of your class for all 4 years for graduation. And freshman year, you're a vice president, secretary of the freshman class, something like that, correct?
Correct. So freshman year, I ran for vice president, and originally Miss Sanders was our advisor. They were like, you need an advisor. She didn't want to do it by herself because she knew how much work it is, to be fair, you know. So she was like, I have a teacher in mind. He might be able to help out if that's okay. And everyone agreed. And that's how I met you. Otherwise, I would have honestly not even known you existed on campus because your classroom was so tucked away behind the library, you know?
Well, now I get one of the biggest classrooms on campus, and we have an entire robotics room in the back of it. So I've grown up, and my classroom grew up. I used to have the small little closet classroom. You're right.
Yeah.
And what's funny is you say something like that, and then your sophomore year, another teacher who doesn't want to do a program completely by themselves goes, I have a person in mind to join robotics and be an advisor for robotics, and that would be me. And so sophomore year, what's robotics like for you freshman and sophomore year, Harwi? How did you enjoy it? What were your adventures, the ups and downs?
Yeah, so freshman year was the second year of the robotics program. It was the first year we competed on a serious level. When we first joined, the advisor was Miss Salazar, and she was just a chemistry teacher. She really cared about making a strong program, and she tried to provide us with every resource she could. But the problem was, like, her background was not in physics, it wasn't in engineering, it was not computer science. So, like, I think inherently she realized that the program would just benefit from someone who is into mechanics, and that's when you come into the picture. And I remember specifically we had a meeting in, you know, student council, my vice president meeting, and then afterwards you asked me, you're like, Harwi, is it okay if I join the robotics program? Like, you were asking me permission before you went and said okay to Miss Salazar. I feel like it's just because you weren't sure maybe if I liked you, which was not the case at all. Maybe you thought, I don't want him to think I'm annoying or something.
There's some honesty to that, Harwi. There was I know my personality, and I didn't want to go into something where you were like, dude, you're not the person I want to hang out with. It was already your thing, and you could tell when kids love stuff. That's part of being a good teacher, is you could just see it in them. And so what's funny is Miss Salazar invited me into the room, and she was trying to get a whole bunch of teachers to buy in, and I think I was the only one who did. And so those first 2 years, if I'm recalling right, you guys make it all the way to Anaheim. Am I correct on that?
So the first year we went by luck, honestly. It was our first competition. Back then the rules were a lot stricter. So like maybe the robotics kids don't realize. Back then you qualified for Worlds for just winning a competition. It could be the smallest regional thing, and it could just be 16 teams competing. If you win, you go to Worlds. So that's kind of like what happened with us. We got lucky. We got picked by a good alliance, and then we qualified for Worlds. Instead, we decided to go to Nationals because of cost. And that's when we went to Omaha, Nebraska, which is where, like, when we came back from Omaha, that really changed the program, because up until that point, the bar for us was just the local bar, what we've seen in San Diego. And then we were like, oh yeah, we're definitely top 20%, whatever. We go to Omaha where it's nationals. We see that the bar has potential to like break the ceiling, go past the roof. We come back, we honestly don't feel like we were a great team, which motivated us. We saw that there was better out there.
Yeah. Oh, you had some examples of teams that had actually been doing organized, not necessarily VEX Robotics, but having an engineering school. And that's the one thing for everyone out there listening to this. Mustang Robotics, I believe, is special because we are an after-school program. We don't get funding from our school district. If you're my school district out there listening, you're always welcome to fund us. But we do this really on our own as an after-school club. And we excel at some of the highest levels in San Diego and Southern California. So I would agree with you. There is a incredible difference when you look back at the notebooks, when you look back at the team structure, the way you guys discuss stuff. And every year we just kind of try to improve. But Nationals, according to even Steven, was a little bit of this adventure like, hey, you know what? If we do this again, we want to go to Worlds. And so sophomore year, Worlds is at Anaheim. Do you remember anything about that adventure?
Yeah. Well, before we move on from Nationals, I just wanted to point out that okay, so when it was a 3-day event, I believe. After the first day, we mentally checked out that we weren't winning anything. Right. After the first day, we had so many problems with measuring the robot and passing inspection that Steven, Jay Parikh, and I were like, okay, for the next 2 days, we're going to show up to every match. We're going to show up. But in between matches, we're just going to go and talk to the best teams. So that's really what that whole competition was about. We didn't compete on a serious level, but we learned a lot. Then next year, when we went to Anaheim for, I believe it was Gateway, that was the game. That was our first experience where we were able to meet teams from New Zealand, which at the time were one of the top teams in the world. And we had seen their videos on the VEX Robotics forums. We would always be browsing the forums, and we saw New Zealand was constantly posting. So that was when we were really able to connect with the best teams in the world and ask them very specific questions about gear ratios, I remember their programming. They were very gracious in that they totally opened up their laptop and they let me go line by line to figure out how they were coding. Because up until my second year, our coding was very basic. We were just going off of examples off of the VEX website. It wasn't until my junior year when I believe Tyler Martin joined, and he really excelled. I feel like Tyler Martin excelled in programming to where he set a standard for he set the programming standard for the program for Mustang Robotics. Yeah,
agreed. And as you walk through all of that, it's super honest. And for all my Mustangs out there, my current Mustang teams, you wonder why I ask you and go to help other teams. You wonder why at every event I volunteer you while you're sitting there and you're fine with our robot to go and help a team that's brand new or give parts when we have extra stuff. It's because when we started, other teams benefited us in such a way that we have to do that. It's ingrained. We were given, and now we need to give back. And so
they gave us parts, they gave us access to codes. There were plenty of times where they would send over their mentor who had an engineering background, where they were able to help us like on more than just a student level. They were able to give us professional help. Yeah.
And discuss things with you. And what's really neat about Worlds is you end up there and you're a kid running around, and I'm an adult and I turn into a kid a little bit at Worlds. But everyone is in a world that you feel like a young adult. You feel like you're being given so much respect, and you start to watch these conversations between your mentors and the students, and you lose aspect of age. You just see incredible intelligence being shared in conversation. The one thing I remember about you and Steven is I swear one summer you guys spent the entire summer building a shifting transmission in a robot. And I just remember laughing as we shifted into second gear and it was already hitting the other side of the field. You guys built some incredible stuff, some very high quality stuff. And we go through your old notebooks. We still have those. So there's notes in there that maybe Leanne wrote down that we're still using, you know?
Yeah, Team 507D's old notebooks, that's all credit to Leanne. None of us did anything to that except for Leanne. So
yeah, well, she knows how you guys handwrite. She wasn't going to let you mess it up. Nowadays, Harwi, every single person is required to make documentation. So everyone should have good handwriting out there. Okay, so I do know that you continue in robotics the entire time you're at Otay Ranch. I mean, it's your soul.
Third year, that's when Sack Attack was a thing. I remember for my third year, we were doing decent. We were like 2-2, and then it was like our fifth match of the day, and we get tipped over. Like one of the robots just tips us over. And then I was so upset because we had recording. Mr. Mendoza, Leanne's dad, recorded it. You could totally tell that they just lifted their arm up and tipped us. And then I was like, I'm taking this to Karthik. I walk over to the CEO of VEX and I'm like, look at this video. They totally cheated us out of a win. And then he was like, I'm sorry. We got to go with the judge's decision. It's just policy. No hard feelings. I was like, okay, I tried. You know, I wasn't able to leave that alone.
No. And I remember that. It was one of those moments where you kind of realize that and the idea of our schedules. If I recall, you guys always got the bots who never showed up to Worlds, or the ones that were push bots, are not really necessarily the highest quality, partners in the world on the whole list that's pre-established. But I do remember you guys trying to explain your part, and that gentleman gave you all the respect he could and then told you, I'm sorry, this is the way it is. Disappointment lived on your guys' faces for a good hour and a half. And then something happens in that room. You can't be bummed out all day while you're at Worlds. Something happens and you kind of enjoy yourself. So we've also gone to States. If I'm correct, States was a trip to San Francisco back when you were a kid. And we would somehow either fly up there or drive up to the Bay Area and have something at an amusement park, I think.
Yeah, I believe it was in San Jose my senior year. The All-America Amusement Park, something like that.
Something like that. I think it was a Great America, which is related to Magic Mountain and stuff. That one goes down as the night I think I did karaoke with the kids and stuff. So
yes. I remember that. That was a
you
good.
You may have been up on stage with me and Steven, yes. All right, my friend. So we're in high school. Every kid, junior, senior year, and my juniors and seniors are going through this right now. Except for a couple of them already put in their early apps. You start to think about what you want to do for college. And my feeling is you took a lot of the robotics feeling and you went with that as you started to pick your pathway and stuff. So can you describe to us what colleges you applied to, what you were thinking about studying, and kind of your first step from high school out into that secondary academic field?
Yeah, so I was one of the first graduating classes to be in the program for 4 years. So immediately I was like, okay, engineering. I applied to mechanical and computer engineering just because I was my team's coder at the time. I was like, I have a little bit experience of coding. So I applied to a lot of UC schools, UCSD, UCI, UCLA, UC Santa Barbara. I didn't want to leave SoCal at the time, so I applied to a few CSUs, San Diego State, Cal Poly Pomona, Cal Poly, CSU Long Beach, all those. And thinking back, I was all a numbers guy. I picked my college without visiting, right? So I just, at the end, when I got all my acceptances back, I literally went on like US college ranking and I just picked the highest one and I said, I'm going there. And looking back, that was probably not the wisest decision I've ever made because that determines the people that you're going to be around and what you're going to study and the city's culture and environment. That's going to have a huge influence on you. But for me, it was just, what's the most prestigious school? That's where I'm going to.
And I think we've heard that a lot of our alumni didn't necessarily put a lot of that academic attack into figuring out all the variables with college. They did something similar to you, which was prestige was a really important part of where you chose to go. And so I thank you for this part of the conversation because early on you're telling us, hey, you know what, guys, maybe I look at this a little bit different. What kind of things do you think you would look at right now? What would be, let's say you go back, you time travel back, and you're making these decisions and you get all your acceptance letters. What would you decide as your number 1, 2 variable right now that you think you would want to look at?
Yeah, so at the time, I just wanted to go to the most prestigious school, and I wasn't even thinking about grad school as an option, right? Because most engineers don't go to grad school, usually end up with a few certifications and you're set. But what kids don't really realize is, you go to the most prestigious school, but why is it prestigious, right? In the case of the UC schools, it's prestigious because they're huge research institutions, right? A lot of your tuition, by the way, out of the community college, state schools, and UCs is the most expensive. A lot of your tuition just goes towards projects that the undergraduate students will never even interact with, never even see. They're funded towards the professors who have usually 1 or 2 classes, and then the rest of the year they're on retainer for a project.
Correct.
And very quickly, when I went to UC Irvine, that was the first school I went to, I realized that I didn't have the same interactions with my professors in that I was placed in a 300-person classroom. They didn't know my name, and they were very upfront. One of my first chemistry teachers at UCI told us that this was his only class and that he's working on 2 research projects on the side. So the school basically forced him to teach. He didn't want to teach. What he cared about was his research. So for people who are picking like prestigious schools, just understand that sometimes it's prestigious, but not to your benefit. And with that in mind, if you want to go to UC school, I think it's a shame to not be involved in their research programs in your undergraduate career. Because why are you going to a research school and paying for a research school if you can't put on your resume that you did research?
Correct.
And 9 times out of 10, those professors that offer you research projects will offer you a job or will recommend you something. And I cannot stress how many kids I saw go through the UC system who did not even apply to any of the programs that the school was funding. So that was something I had no idea in high school, right? I was like, UCI's number 1, that's where I'm going. But when I got there, it wasn't until like my second year where I realized what type of school or what type of student this school benefits. Correct. It's the student that wants to get into research. It's the student that that understands the need to connect with faculty, and it's on you to do it. While, for example, the CSU schools are much smaller setting, it's more. I would say the teachers know you more. it's very rare that you'll find like 300-person classrooms in the CSU or community college setting, and some students thrive in that. So the prestigious school might not be your best benefit if you don't thrive in an environment where you're stuck in a 300-person classroom. What's the point of going to a prestigious school if you're going to struggle academically because of the environment, when you can go to another school where you're used to the semester system, you're used to the smaller classes, you're used to the teacher staying behind after class to ask a question. One of my professors at UCI was like, I gotta go. They're like, you gotta email me questions. I'm like halfway to my car as soon as the class is done.
Hari, what's interesting is you're making me laugh, because I remember going to San Diego State, and San Diego State every once in a while will have some professors that research. Most of the time they don't. Or if they do, it's more of a academic research, not so much of gathering data. And you would have teachers who are exactly like you say. They would be there for the time that they were told they had to be there. And at 10 minutes towards the end of class, they may actually be the first person out the door, not the students. And you would imagine the students are the first person out the door. And then I had other teachers at the end of class who were like, hey guys, I'm going to go over and get some food. If you guys want to continue talking, come sit at a table with me and we'll just chit chat. We'll eat dinner tonight. I have another class later on. And finding that mix that you require. What you're telling me is we got to look at this one more level, which is based upon the academic study and the pathway that you're following. You need to start to be aware before you pick your school, whether or not you want to do summer research projects, you want to do internships, or whether or not you find that those things don't necessarily are not required or not necessarily what you want to do. And that I think for everyone to hear is really important. That's that variable I'm looking for you to tell me. And the variable right now is don't go to a research-based campus unless you're going to do research. And if you do end up on one, then go find some research to do so you can write that on your application.
Right. Go find some research to do because you're paying for the opportunity to do that.
Correct.
So why let that money go to waste? And honestly, after high school, it's just you have to look out for yourself, like you have to go to counselors in high school. They force you to go talk to them, but no, you have to go talk to counselors yourself. You have to start taking care of yourself. Yeah.
And what's interesting is you pick a campus that's probably one of the closest college campuses to where I grew up in Orange County. It was known when I was growing up as a medical campus, and their secondary campus, which is the campus you were going to, which like expanded, which is their main campus now, really started to blossom their engineering and their computers, within the last 20 years, not necessarily when I was growing up. We had no idea UCI was going to turn and do both. But that medical engineering is a huge part of UCI. Bioengineering, I think, is there too. And so you choose to study what when you leave Otay Ranch High School?
So when I leave Otay, okay, funny story. When I leave Otay, I get accepted at UCI as undeclared undecided in their engineering program.
Okay.
Right? So I'm in the School of Engineering, but they don't know where to place me. And then a few weeks, I was like, okay, that's fine, whatever. And then a few weeks later, they email me and they say, hey, if you want to put in a little essay or a video explaining why we should put you in a specific program, let us know. Well, 2 months before, Leanne made a video for Worlds explaining all of robotics, and it had me talking in it. And in the video, I said, I want to be a mechanical engineer. I just said it in the video, just cut. Right? So I sent them that video, and I'm like, I want to be a mechanical engineer.
And that's how you chose it. And so, and for the audience out there, would you mind just quickly, we'll go back, but fast forward to what you did graduate or what we're working on currently for your graduation. What degree are you going to graduate with in the next few weeks, I believe, or in the next couple months?
Yeah. So I will be finishing my business administration and accounting degree.
Correct. And I need the world to really hear what we just said. Okay. So my friend goes from mechanical engineering. He's really the programmer and the computer programmer for his team. He's engineering, and trust me, Hari always would build something, but Stephen would usually push him out of the way. But this is interesting because his pathway is programming, mechanical engineering, and it sounds like a little bit by accident, by statement, by documentation, someone quoted you. And then, we move all the way to the end and we see that you have a completely different career field. We do have a question, I believe, from the audience. Jai, you want to bring a question into this conversation?
Yes, one of the audience from the San Diego area is wondering, how will you describe the culture in UCI?
So the culture of UCI, there's everyone at UCI is there to study, right? You're going to a research school. It's not going to be like the movies where there's parties every weekend and whatnot. But the culture doesn't necessarily mean people don't like to socialize. So in UCI, everyone dances. It's one of the biggest dancing schools in the country, probably. We have one of the best dancers that professionally come out of the school. My current campus, Cal Poly, has a dance program, and they always envy UCI's dance program. Apparently, it's legendary, and I can attest to that. I had plenty of friends who did that. But the culture, it's very conservative. The city of Irvine, very conservative. You'll never see a homeless person out on the streets because they'll immediately pick them up and take them to Santa Ana. So it's
Sorry, Harwi, you said the truth, kid. If my parents are out there listening, I hope you're laughing, guys. But keep going, Harwi. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, okay. But to that point, it's a very artificial and sterile and planned community. When the Irvine construction company planned out the campus and the surrounding communities, there was like this master plan that involved like these very strict guidelines: no partying, quiet hours at like 10 p.m., constant police patrol. So it's a very safe. It kind of feels like you're in like the Truman Show, where it's like everything's a little too perfect, a little too clean here.
Well, and what's funny is we're in a community where we have our housing structure is set up a little bit like Irvine. In Chula Vista, we have our 500-600 houses in a neighborhood surrounded by a wall. It's a maze to get to your friend's house inside of it. Irvine has always felt like that, and it's been that way since I was a kid. The very first community they built was like, why are you making a rat maze to drive around? But what I'm hearing from you is you do have to research the community you move into, and moving from San Diego to Orange County, Irvine specific, you really actually flop that spectrum from, and if we talk political, from liberal to conservative. You 100% went from the one spectrum in California to the other. And I would wonder if the start of school, the realizing that maybe the campus wasn't perfect, the community feeling a little bit different, all of these things, how long before you kind of felt like UCI just wasn't clicking?
Well, there's a few things that pretty much immediately, long answer short, pretty much immediately, my first quarter, I knew that I just wasn't excited about school being here, and that's a very hard feeling to accept, because it feels like you've already committed, like you're already on this path and you have to finish it. But I have a friend, I won't drop any names, but he went with me to UCI. We're the same graduating class, and he dropped out within the year, so he left. And afterwards he went to community college, went to state school, and he graduated, and he's as happy as he could be. But he was telling me one time that he just wasn't happy, and a year after that is when I left UCI. But
and guys, we want to really throw out right now, especially from any of my current kids, we have recent graduates from our program who are attending UCI, and they're loving it right now. And so please understand, as Harwi explains this, the tone isn't necessarily about the name of the school. There are going to be some of us in Mustang Robotics where UCI is a perfect fit. For others, it is not. But the idea of going out and doing your research, and we are talking to a group of kids out there, Mustangs, any VEX Robotics kid, you guys are researchers. You guys are the kids who usually put in all the time to get things right. why are we avoiding some of this research about school campuses and just keeping it straight academics? Let's start talking about food culture. Let's start talking about when other people are moving to the East Coast and you have weather changes, or moving to Washington. We've heard that from your cousin that there's no sun in Washington, like that was a huge change. And we heard from Adrian, MIT, my God, snow on the ground. I wasn't ready for that. No good Mexican food. But but I do think this is honest, that for you out there, if right now you go through all your variables and you pick UCI, congratulations, that's cool. You go attack it, you do your thing.
Yep. And don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing UCI, just to emphasize your point. UCI, beautiful campus, very smart professors, just insanely smart professors who have devoted their lives to what they're doing. And not all of them are what I described, where they just walk out of a 300-person classroom. It's just from what I experienced was my first few years, especially with your GE classes, they like to herd you all together. I personally didn't make it to the point where you could potentially have smaller classrooms with really brilliant people.
But by then you were already a little bit burned out and it didn't taste right. And then I would imagine
so in high school, I was always like an overachiever, where my grades kind of fueled me. When I got good grades, it motivated me to keep going, right? But then a combination of the environment, me being homesick, I wasn't really into the major. Like I said, research your major, research the city, the surroundings of the city, everything. And there was just like the perfect storm for me to honestly get like C's, D's my first year. And I was like, wow, I have to repeat some classes that I already didn't enjoy. So, I looked at my options. And after my first year, I saw that, I had to take an economics class for my engineering course curriculum. That was like one of the only classes I got like an A+ in. And I was like, okay, I'll try out economics. I got into the major. I stayed there for a quarter. I killed it with grades. But then I thought to myself, why am I spending so much money here to be an econ major? I could go anywhere and get the same major and probably be in a healthier environment. Because even though I was doing well in school, I still didn't like the culture, didn't like the environment too much. And I felt like, UCI's economic school wasn't some prestigious, out-of-the-world school. I could just do this anywhere. And that's where my mindset came into. It's time for me to look at options and reroute my career path and whatnot.
And so you chose to check out a UCI, come back to San Diego, sign up at a school to get through your AA. Now, at this moment in time, me to you, great choice, kid. You got a fresh start. You come on back. You got some home cooking. You get a hug from mom. You get to come by Otay Ranch High School and see me, at the beginning of the school years and help out. And so it's kind of like
I helped with Sandy Hodge. When I came back, I was like helping Mr. Brido. I was helping Miss Sandy Hodge. I was doing a lot when I came back, just because I thought to myself, like, that's what made me happy when I was here. So I should just jump back into it. Yeah.
Agreed. And Miss Hodge watches a lot of these episodes, so you probably made her smile if she's watching right now.
She's a wonderful woman if she's watching. Very dedicated to the local league.
Oh God, incredibly, and we thank her for everything she does with us. And so, Harwi, you come on back. You end up going to the community college near our school, and you start to get through all of your core classes that are required for you to get your AA. Once you're done with your AA degree, you transfer to San Diego State.
Okay, so
you never did make it there.
No, I never went to San Diego State.
Okay, because we had talked, and you said you may end up there, and I was wondering if you went and didn't like that too. So I do know you're at Cal Poly Pomona.
Yeah, the sister satellite was what was once a sister satellite school to the Cal Poly SLO campus.
Correct. And, so do you do classes online right now?
I do. Yeah, I'm finishing up my last two. This will be my second semester. I'm finishing up completely online, and then I'll be done with my degree.
Cool. So what was the difference? How did you come to pick that campus after all of this? Did you put more research in this time? Did you ask friends? Did you go to campus? Did you drive up there and walk around and see if you liked it? Was it a different type of investment to find your second college campus than your first?
Yeah. So after I got my associates for transfer, I was told I would. What that is, let me explain that. So if you go to Southwestern and you basically maintain like a 3.0 average and you're on this course for an associate's in business or public health or criminology, you get guaranteed admission to a CSU school. And if you get a little bit higher grades and take like a few more classes, your GPA has to be like a 3.4, guaranteed admission to a UC school. So you're paying like $1,700 instead of like $25,000, right? And you get credit for it, and so that's what I decided to do. I did the associates for transfer program. I got my business administration associates, and then I applied to San Diego State, Cal Poly, and CSU Fullerton, CSU Long Beach, some other locals. Unfortunately, I didn't get into San Diego State, and it's because they did want to see my UCI transcript.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, they did look at that, but Cal Poly, they also looked at it, and I guess they acknowledged that this guy's grades are good in the relevant subjects. So when I made that decision, I realized that Cal Poly Pomona has a motto called "Learn by Doing," and that's the type of learner I am. Like just with robotics, I like using my hands, and I actually like applying what I learned to a real life project. And so my school's motto is learn by doing. And so far in all of my upper division classes, I've had to do a big project involving what we learned. So 2 semesters ago, I did an entire financial analysis of Pfizer, right? The pharmaceutical company. And that's pretty funny because they're all over the news right now talking about, hey, we're going to have a vaccine 90% efficacy rate. And I'm like, hey, I know how much money they poured into research and development.
I know that. We have another question from our audience. Sophia, you got a question?
Yes, one of the audience members in Chula Vista wants to ask, what was your favorite aspect of Cal Poly?
Oh, so my favorite aspect of Cal Poly was that it's a small school. So UCI, when you would walk around UCI, huge, right? You could get lost. There's so many like little buildings, little nooks and crannies. Cal Poly, it's a small school, and the surrounding community, believe it or not, is like it reminds me a lot of Chula Vista, except there's this one part, Pomona, that's very scary. You shouldn't go there at night. But it reminded me of home. The weather was great. At winter time, it felt like winter. At summertime, it felt like summer. There was seasons. The leaves were falling, and also the learn by doing motto. That's what was very important, because all of that you can put on your resume. All those, because they're big projects. The teachers expect you to take a month and a half to do these projects in your upper division classes. So instead of doing an internship, you can just focus on like getting great grades on those projects, and it's something very like impressive to show to employers. Yeah.
So that's almost a little bit like a replacement for like at a UC school where you would do an internship, or you would do like summer research or something with a professor, and you'd write that on your application. What you found is you were on we would use the word kinesthetic. Kinesthetic is a hands-on approach to things where you're actually interacting and learning. Robotics is a kinesthetic activity, programming, kinesthetic, all of those. Definitely. And so we're discussing this in a way in which you found that your projects became a very important part of expressing to your future employers, this is what I did, this should count for something. That's really cool. I like that.
So there's that part of it, right? Where it's like, it's something impressive. Right now, this semester, I'm doing like a business simulation where I started like a bike company, and we're like pumping out numbers based off of like current environments and trends. So all of that sounds impressive to employers. But at the same time, at UCI, me personally, again, this is all just in my situation, everything I was learning, I thought to myself, when would I ever use this? Like this concept is so vague, and it uses so many imaginary numbers and physics. Like where would be a real life application? And then this school's whole motto is surrounded by take what you learned and apply it to real life. So it makes what you're learning more valuable.
Because you're supposed to put a real life story to it.
Right, like a real life application. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I got you, kid. And then one of the things that we started doing green in our notebooks is price cataloging parts, what the total amount of hours possibly for each of the robots we build, things like that is us doing some of the things you're talking about, where you're getting everything arranged by numbers there. So Hari, you end up it's this is amazing because I think a lot of people would be nervous about sharing this story, but I also understand not a lot of people are Mustang Robotics alumni.
Yeah.
And you coming in and allowing us to hear that I wish we had a replay or a mulligan and we could go back and start this over. There are other things or other ways you would look at how you would choose your college. Guys, I hope you're listening out there because coming from me, I've repeatedly said you need to research the community. You need to research the types of food in the community because I have a tummy that just would not handle crazy food changes. You got to research the culture in the community and make sure that your culture is accepted in that community. And no offense to anyone out there, but some places in the United States may not accept people who don't necessarily represent what that culture and that community is. Weather. Oh my God, weather. Now, Hari eliminated that. He just stayed in Southern California, but that didn't seem to give us the greatest choice. We got to a school that didn't mix. Hari, do you think it's different if you go to UCI and that first semester you have a couple different teachers and they click with you a little bit more? Because I'm starting to feel that really that first semester just didn't click, and getting off to a good start in college is so important. Did your first semester at Poly, did you end up having a professor that just made you like it felt right, or were you just more mature and understanding of what you were going into?
I think a little bit of both. My first quarter at UCI, it was exactly that. I felt like I was just another fish in a big pond, and the teachers didn't know my name. They didn't want to know my name. It was on me to learn everything, and it was up to me to ask questions about stuff I didn't understand. And when I went to Cal Poly, I had that expectation. I had the expectation where it's on me again. This time, don't mess up. Go to a good start. I clicked with a few of like my first semester at Cal Poly, my biggest class was only 35 people. So first day of class, I sat in the front. By the second day of class, the teacher already knew my name.
Yeah.
That's
we have high school classes that are bigger than that at Otay. God, that would be nice to only have 35 kids in a class. All right, my friend.
To answer your question, it was also the maturity because my first semester at Cal Poly, I took an 8 a.m. class, never once late to that. First semester at UCI, I took like a 9 a.m. class, and let me tell you, it's hard waking up when your parents have been telling you your whole life, wake up, go to school. I'm gonna be honest, it was hard waking up. I would show up late, and I would miss out on material, and that was on me to pick up later. Yeah.
And for everyone out there, going a pathway through college, honestly, is different for every single person. And for some people, going straight to a 4-year is perfect. For other people, starting at your local community college and keeping a couple bucks in your pocket and making decisions, just trying to figure out what you want to study maybe. Most of your friends, no offense, may not bring up these stories. And again, Hari, I thank you for all of this honesty as we approach these last few minutes of our interaction here and the Q&A that's probably coming here. I think for me, you've always hit me as a kid who could explain what you were thinking at the time, and you were verbal enough to express your thoughts. So, what are the things from Mustang Robotics that you think have traveled with you the most, all the way to who you are now? Because you're here and you're spending your Friday night with us, so there's got to be something still stuck inside of you that's, churning Mustang Robotics. But what are those skills you took from the club that you feel like right now benefit you the most?
There's plenty. So there's like interpersonal skills. Has nothing to do with physics or robotics or anything. Talking to judges at competitions, it breaks your fear of talking to someone older than you. It breaks your fear of talking to someone who you may know knows more than you.
Yeah, very true.
So that skill set carries over to job interviews. It carries over to when you're talking to your professor. If you talk to your professor with confidence, they immediately notice that, and it's this. All these things are usually overcome by the time you're a second year in college. It's just the first year students who didn't have that opportunity to do that in high school, and it takes them a bit to catch up. But you definitely have that interpersonal speaking skills, and also the ability to just lead. Like I said, my school, there's a lot of projects and stuff, and the number one thing that kids have problems with is just communication, and you can't really build a robot without proper communication. So all of you guys already have that down. As for the technical skills, I was surprised to learn that when I went to accounting, a lot of my programming skills carried over.
Oh.
So
I would imagine that, but like seriously, you really honestly felt like it really was more of a direct, not just like you were playing on a computer and you play on a computer when you do that, but like the actual programming coding was helpful when you got into where you were at.
Definitely. So the syntax of code, even though so Microsoft Excel has a built-in compiler and a built-in language called SQL, and when you read it, it's very similar to like C#, the syntax. So even if you don't know SQL, you look at a little sheet of SQL and you understand that's the object, that's the value. You can change it around based off of what you want. So when I'm getting into my accounting field, when I'm using Microsoft Access, which is a database website, I'm using Microsoft Excel. My classmates more often than not don't understand how I'm able to do things like do a homework assignment in 2 steps when it would take them like 5 or 6 steps.
Gotcha. Because you're compiling the language, and the pattern that you see pops out faster for you to utilize.
Exactly. Like when I'm doing, for example, comparisons in Excel, a normal person would have to go into the toolbar, right? Go into the toolbar, find the sub menu, and then put down the values like any cell greater than this defined cell. So they have to go into a bunch of like UI in order to solve the problem. And that can get a little confusing if you're not too familiar with Excel. But if you just bring up SQL, everything you want to do is just like right in front of you. And instead of going through menu to menu to menu, you can just go to line 45 and change it. Right.
I got you, kid. I don't want to say you're cheating, but you're kind of going a whole different pathway that allows you to kind of just skip a lot of those clicking steps. You're just opening it up.
My professor in what is called forensic accounting, fraud accounting, finding fraud. We were using Microsoft Access, and he wanted us to basically put a conditional statement in a cell. And he was like, I want you to do it using a pivot table. I don't know how to use pivot tables at this point in time, or at that point in time. So I used an embedded if statement, which is what I learned in robotics. I showed him, I submit it. I'm like, look, I know this isn't how you wanted it, but I get the right answer. And then he goes, oh, wow, I've never seen any accounting student do this before. Like, this is a very unique way of doing it. And I want you to show the class when we have class on Thursday.
And we'll show you how to make your table, but you need to show us and this is interesting because we have heard from other alumni that they were surprised at what they did in robotics and how it affected them in their next step. You brought up Leanne. Leanne had told us, this transfers into the medical field. And we've had, kids tell us it transfers into the military. And we've had kids tell us it transfers every, walk of life. I would ask all you Mustangs, all you VEX Robotics kids, enjoy the experience of robotics. I'm sorry we don't get it this year the same way we've always got it. But as you enjoy it, realize you are growing up, you are maturing, you are building skills, even though on a Saturday we're just having a great old time and we're running around being, kids and staff. So at this point, Harwi, I'm gonna tell everyone in the audience that if you do have a question, we hope that you type it in the chat bar. I got a couple of young ladies who are reading the chat, and I'm kind of hoping that they can facilitate a couple more questions from the audience for us today. But as they're getting ready to give us those questions, I'm going to throw out a couple of things that I just kind of recall and remember. So you and Steven and on your team, I just recall that you guys constantly, like, it would be like 2 a.m. and you guys would be writing things to each other, or like you come in and show me something in the morning that Steven sent you at the night before, and you guys would be just like, I have never seen two people so obsessed together. Usually I get one kid on a team out there, like Eddie, who's like obsessed with robotics. You love it, kid. But this was like 2 Eddies on the same team, dude, constantly, all the time. And then we'll give a shout out to all the other kids that were on your team. We have Jay, and we have who else was on? Fabian. And then
David Barnes was on it for a little bit.
Very cool. I like this. But, all right.
Yeah, I would say the reason, one last note, the reason why Steven and I were so dedicated, and we were talking about this like a few months ago, was really because we wanted to set the bar as high as possible so that when we left, there would be no worries that this program would fail. Because we cared about the program so much, we just wanted it to keep getting better, and we knew that in 4 years we can't make it the best, but we can try to make it the best. And that's what this is all about. And when Miss Salazar passed you off the torch, you did an amazing job to keep it going. You know, it's picked up so much momentum. When I saw the vice principal of Otay Ranch, I don't know, 4 years ago, wonderful lady, I can't remember her name right now. She said that she's planning to transfer her student to Otay, even though that's not where her school or home address is, for the robotics program. So upper administration at Otay know that this is one of the biggest deals at the school, and that's what we wanted to leave.
Well, you left a place that churns out valedictorians on campus constantly, and so with that being said, Jai, you got a question for us?
Yes, I'm wondering, what were your thoughts on the dorm and housing situation at UCI?
Yeah, so dormant housing at UCI is almost everyone I know dormed on campus their first year, mostly because the surrounding communities of Irvine is very expensive to rent out. So you'd be spending a lot of money as like an 18-year-old, probably living with someone you don't know if you're living off campus, and that's probably not the best ideal situation for your first year. The friends you make your first year at the dorms, they usually end up being like your closest friends throughout college. So what was special about UCI, though, is they had dorms based off of major. I was in the engineering dorm. Everyone around me was engineers, and what was really cool is we would have like study sessions, or we would break out into study groups because we're all taking like physics 102 at the same time. And there was there were different dorms, one for engineering, one for theater and arts, and yeah, I think that was a very advantageous experience.
So that Irvine area, I want you guys to imagine, if you're around Otay Ranch, it'd be like going and renting a room in a house. Would probably be one of your options if you lived in off-campus, housing. There's not necessarily a lot of apartment complexes and things like that in that area. Very, very housebound neighborhoods, and so living on campus is pretty traditional for that first year there. And then you'll watch kids spread out and start living in Santa Ana or the Costa Mesa area, or getting into the local little areas with a little bit less money to live in.
Yeah, definitely. So the friends you make your first year, ideally you'd get you and 3 or 4 others, and then you go rent out like a house or an apartment your second year. Never, if you go to UCI, don't spend more than a year in the dorms, because they do offer dorms for second years, but I personally think that's a huge ripoff.
So there's no negative taste about UCI and the dorms and the way it was set up and how you were with your study groups, or at least with the concept areas within the school. That part sounds very positive.
Yeah, it was very positive, but I didn't have a normal dorm. It was engineering themed, because they did have normal dorms where it was a mix of every type of major.
Gotcha.
Those probably give you a different experience. But as for the themed major center dorms, all of them were hyper focused on studying together and making sure you do your best.
Yeah, I'm imagining you check that little box. I want to be in the one where I can nerd out with my friends at night. And speaking of Sophia, I bet you Sophia checks that little box as she goes to college. I want the box where we nerd out every night. What's up, Sophia? You got another question for us?
Yes, Paige, one of our VEX referees, wants to ask you if you've ever considered joining the BattleBots or Robotics Club at Cal Poly.
Ah.
So I have not. If I went there my freshman year, 100%. But by the time I got to Cal Poly, I was already like 3.5, 4 years into school, and my goal was very centered around like the business school. I know that they do take majors outside of engineering, but they probably won't trust you with the same responsibilities as an engineering major. But I would always see them practicing building outside at Cal Poly. They also have a very cool rocket program where they make rockets and they just shoot them out. The civil engineering program has the concrete canoe. That's a very common one. Make a canoe out of concrete and then it has to float and like carry people.
Very cool.
So Cal Poly as a school is very hands-on. UCI did not have a robotics program, which was hugely disappointing for me. But Cal Poly has BattleBots, which is like VEX but way better.
It's got weapons and fire and yeah, maybe a drone attached to it. We would hope that one of these days you at least get to see it in action before you graduate. Jai's back with another question. What's up?
Yes, one of the audience from the chat is wondering if there was one piece of advice you would give yourself, your younger self, what would it be?
I would say, I would tell 18-year-old Harwi, you don't know everything, even though you think you do. I would say, even though you get good grades, doesn't necessarily mean you have the tools needed to succeed in life, because there's more to it than getting good grades. And my 18-year-old self did not know that. If I were to go back and tell him that advice, I'd probably tell him, like, it's not shameful to go to a community college, even though all of your friends who have taken AP classes think so. And at the time, I thought so too. When someone told me I'm going to community college, I thought to myself, they weren't smart enough to get into a 4-year. But they are probably smarter than I am, because they're saving upwards of $40,000 for those 2 years. Think about it, $40,000. You can get like a BMW, like a high-end Camry with that fully loaded. People don't realize that. That's a lot of money, you know?
So you can see why Hari's into accounting here. Hari's brain is wrapped around the numbers in some functional way. And Hari, I think there's a lot of honesty to what you just said, which is I like the AP class thing. You can be one of the smartest people on the planet and still benefit and learn by taking a 100 level course at a local community college. There is no being better than a community college. The books there will be at the same books you may have at your university. And whether or not you're willing to learn.
There might teach at San Diego State part-time. Think about that. So
Yeah.
you're paying for the same professor that you would get at a different campus.
And you happen to get them on the cheaper scale, like that, and the same information and the same personality and the same energy. We got another question out there. Sophia, what you got for us?
Yes, a member of Mustang Robotics would like to ask you, what are your plans as you finish college and become an accountant?
Yes. So I've thought about this a long time, because when I first dropped out of engineering, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I was good at economics, which is what I gravitated towards. And then when I got my business administration associates, I was forced to take accounting. And that's when I fell in love with accounting. So after I graduate in December, I plan to work at any job related to accounting, whether it be for an accounting firm or private industry. And I plan to study for my CPA in the meantime. That's the Certified Public Accountant. It's a 4-part exam that you have to take within a certain time limit. I believe you have like 1.5 years to take it. And once you get that certification, you have it for the rest of your career. And it's the equivalent of getting a master's degree in accounting. So that's how it's been described to me by my professors and other professionals. You get the pay bump as if you have a master's degree. You get the job prioritization when you apply. Like, they look, if one student has a master's degree without the CPA, they'll probably pick the CPA over you. It's the most prestigious certification. So once I get that, I'm planning to take like 1 year to study and work for that. I plan to transition to auditing and forensic accounting, fraud. I want to catch bad guys, but not with a gun, with my brain.
So do you think you'll actually maybe get into criminal investigating, like join a police department or something like that, and try to become a computer-based fraud investigator?
Yeah, so there's many options of fraud. Most of them are in government. So my career path would probably be go into auditing over tax. I will do very little with tax. Auditing is related to fraud because it's a lot about checking the books and making sure they use proper procedures. And after that, I was thinking about working for the State Department, California. You don't necessarily have to work for the police department. You can just work for anywhere to make sure that I don't know. I might even work for our school district, huh? They had some troubles in the past, wouldn't you?
Well, I know that we have another alumni out there, John, who does some accounting too, and he actually, I think, does school accounting, and he checks the books. So I'm imagining you'll have to get in line behind John. He'll make sure the numbers are right. So at this point, Hari, I think we just want to, as a club, as an organization, thank you as an alumni for coming on back on a Friday night when you could have done a variety of things. Not really. You're in COVID shutdown, so we're all stuck. But the idea of you spending the time with a bunch of high school kids and allowing us to ask some questions that dive into things that went good and bad with your college education, the positives and the negatives. I hope that all of us out there can grow from your experience and be able to see that even when things don't feel perfect, you can find a way through this. Hari, we thank you very much for being part of this edition of the Alumni Symposium series. For everyone else out there, we thank you for tuning in and watching this another edition of our wonderful alumni coming and sharing with us all of their thoughts about college and their careers. We hope you come back next Friday where we will have another alumni and we will put on the 10th of the Alumni Symposium series, 6 p.m. next Friday. Please tune in. You guys have a wonderful evening and please wear your masks. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. By yourself.
People try, it's the first thing they do. Only different, it happens to you. Only makes sense when speaking to you, but it got away. My goals are not a part of my goals.